Alright guys, what's going on? My name is Tommy. In today's video I am super excited because, well, it's been a freaking long time coming, and I'm talking about the Remix V2. It is finally here after months of finding a new manufacturer and making sure that the tolerances are great, making sure that we just like the manufacturer and we had a lot of confidence in it. It is here, folks. Now, if I may, let me just quickly talk about what the Remix is, because I don't know, maybe you're new to the game, maybe you've been in the game for a while, but the Remix was originally a passion project of mine. See, a couple years ago when I got really serious with this whole FPV thing, I was wanting my own frame because at the time there wasn't a frame out there that had all of the different features that I wanted. And then a couple of you guys caught wind that I was doing this, and you guys said, well, you know what? We want that frame too. And who am I to hold this back from y'all? So I said, all right, let's make this available for the rest of the folks out there. And as soon as I did that, it was no longer about me, but also the community behind the Remix. And so that's how we came to the V2. We basically listened to you guys about what you guys wanted to see in a V2 to make this a better product. Now, really quickly, the whole philosophy behind the Remix for me was true center of mass. And what I'm talking about is, if I were to give you an example of, say, a hammer. If you were to take a hammer and flick it up into the air, what it would do is it would rotate around the head. And the reason for that is because on a hammer, the head is where all the mass is collected. Well, on a freestyle frame, especially if you're running a GoPro, mass is the combination of the GoPro and the battery. And so for the Remix, the goal of that was really to center that mass down low, as close to the middle of the prop line as possible. Anything that you can do to make your flight controller and drivetrain work less to do what it needs to do, the better your performance is, the easier it is on your components. And even though flight controllers have gotten tremendously better today, that philosophy still holds true. If I were to just throw you another quick analogy, in other frames in which the center of mass is not truly in the center, that flies a little bit more like a football in the air, whereas the Remix flies more like a ball. And so what that really translates to is neutral flying characteristics on all axes. You can expect the same type of behavior no matter what the stick input. So let's talk about what makes V2 V2. Now, it's important to note that all of these changes is a combination of getting your guys' feedback as well as working with Wara GP, basically putting this through its paces and abusing the heck out of it. So between those two things, we found out and collected a whole bunch of data on what we need to do to make it better. So we knew we wanted to strengthen the design of V2, and we were able to actually accomplish a couple of things by doing so. So by thickening the side plates, we were also able to increase the surface area, and by increasing the surface area, we said, hey, this is an opportunity for us to lose the washers from V1 and countersink the bolts straight into the side plates. We offset the weight of the washers, we got ourselves a nice good look, all while strengthening the overall design. So I heard the community, everybody wanted stronger arms, so we made 5mm conversion arms available. So for V2, we knew that we needed to focus on the main plates and make sure that that was stronger. And we did that by getting rid of the pocket milling, effectively creating a 3mm solid top plate, as well as reinforcing where the arms mount. While we're at the top plate, what you'll also notice is that there are additional lipo strap slots in the back. Most of you guys out there were mounting the batteries traditionally. However, for you folks that really just wanted to get the most benefit of having true center of mass, and I'm talking about you folks that like to mount your battery toilet tank style, you'll be happy to know that V2 can still handle that as well. Now, for you folks that want to take advantage of the smallest stack, the lightest weight stack, there's an extra set of 20x20 mounting holes in that top plate so that you guys can go ahead and mount those components. Now, the improvements continue on to the bottom plate. In hard belly landings, what we were finding was that the bottom plate was starting to get damaged where the sled mates to the bottom plate. After analyzing a couple of these crashes and where the things were breaking, we noticed that on the sled itself was a very sharp point. What we did was increase that surface area so that way there was a little bit more to actually mate to that bottom plate. Alright, so while we're talking about that hatch plate, what you'll notice is the fact that with the overhang of the top plate, when you put the panhead bolts there, it acts like a little bit of a retainer so that when you're taking that sled out, the bolts don't just easily fall out. Alright folks, so let's talk about the very front of the Remix V2, and that is the camera cage. What you'll notice is that everything about it is a lot thicker, it has a lot more strength, a little bit more durability, and the first thing I want to point out is that it no longer has the session kit. Now, while the dimensions of that is still the same from V1 to V2, what that means is that if you're rocking a 3D printed GoPro mount from V1, that it works with V2. Now the reason why we did this is because most of you guys out there is actually rocking a 3D printed GoPro mount instead of using the session kit. However, for you OG folks that just really like that session kit from V1, and I really like it, it's still fully compatible. You can buy it from the store. It will work from V2. That session kit was actually acting as a structural integrity part to keep the front plates from shifting back and forth in the event of a crash. So, because we got rid of that from V2, what we did to counter that was add a chin plate. So the other thing about that camera cage is you notice the new camera slot design. The awesome thing about this, whether you're rocking a normal size camera, whether you're rocking the mini, the micro, as long as you've got the proper adapter, it will work with this frame. Which means if you got that micro with that crazy big long lens, that'll work fine. Just scoot it up back. If you got that micro frame with the itty lens, that's fine too. Just scoot the whole camera forward and it'll be just fine. And the awesome thing is anywhere along that slot, you still got 10 to 50 degrees of adjustment. Alright folks, let's do a quick wrap up. What makes V2 freaking awesome? 5mm arms, microcam compatibility, everything about it is just that much stronger. 20x20 compatibility, and for you folks rocking V1, you can slowly upgrade to V2 without just having to jump to an entire V2 kit, all while still maintaining that true center of mass philosophy that I stand behind with the Remix frame. In fact, if I just really quick, this is the frame design that, you know, for a short while, a lot of people started building their frames upside down just so that they could get that battery in the center of that prop line, which to me says a lot. So guys, if you haven't already, check this frame out. In my opinion, it is the best flying frame to date. Alright guys, now that we talked about what makes V2, let's go ahead and put this frame together.
Alright, first up, grab your side plates and let's make sure that you got your left and right side correctly, and you'll know that because the pocket milling on the side plates should be facing the outside. Now these should fit pretty snug, but if you find that they don't go in, then you can take a file and just take a couple of light passes on the inner slots on both pieces of carbon. Again, you just want to do this very lightly because you do want it to be a snug fit, but it shouldn't be loose either. Then grab your top plate, and that should just pop right on from above. No biggie there. Then flip it over, grab your chin plate, and slide the tabs in from one side, then carefully push out the other side plate and slide the other side of tabs in. Next, grab your 5mm aluminum spacer and insert that, and grab yourself a 12mm bolt to hold that spacer in place. Now, the bolt doesn't need to be all the way tight, just finger tightened. In fact, all of the bolts moving forward should only just be lightly tightened. Next, grab yourself a couple of more 12mm bolts and insert them into the innermost holes where you see here. Once again, just lightly tighten them. They don't need to be tightened all the way. We'll do that later on. Grab your hatch side plates, paying attention to the sides and making sure that left's left, right is right. And again, you'll know that because the pocket milling should be on the outside. Put one side on first and grab yourself a 12mm bolt, and then grab one of these shorter standoffs to hold everything in place. Then grab the hatch plate, paying attention to the tabs as well as the corners. You can only put this in one way, so you can't get this part wrong. Then grab the other side plate and put that one on and hold that in place with another 12mm bolt. Then grab the longest standoff in the pack. That's going to go out back, and that is what will hold the rear hatch slet together. These go in place with 8mm bolts. Repeat on the other side. Now grab your arm, and now you have a decision to make. If your prop's in, you'll want to make sure that the motor guides are that way. And if your prop's out, you'll want to make sure that the motor guides face the outside. I like to go props out, so this is how I'm going to build mine. Next, you can keep the arms in place by using 12mm bolts. Repeat on all four corners, again paying attention to props out versus props in for the motor guides. Grab a lock nut, making sure that the flat side is facing down, and use a small tool to slide that in about halfway. Then grabs an 18mm bolt, that's the longest bolt in the pack, and while the quad is still upside down, go ahead and insert that through. And I find that this is just an easier way to keep from that lock nut from falling out. Repeat it on the other side, and then you can tighten the top bolts. Now grab your remaining standoffs and a couple of 8mm bolts and put those in. Repeat on the other side, and at this point you should be able to tighten all of your bolts. Be careful not to over tighten, you don't want to strip these. They do need to be tight, but they don't need to be extremely tight. Next up, we need to decide where you want to put the lipo catch hook. Now you'll note that this can go on any of the four corners, it just depends on where you want it, and you hold that in place using a 12mm pan head bolt. Grab your file. Now this step isn't necessary, however I have found that if you do a couple of passes to the slot as well as a couple of passes to the inner corners that you see here, it just makes closing this hatch that much easier. You can also use some heat shrink to keep these lock nuts in place so that when you do open and close this hatch, they don't fall out easily. So grab a lock nut, making sure that the flat side is facing up, insert that as well as a piece of heat shrink over it. Then use a lighter or a heat gun to shrink that wrap up. Repeat on the other side, and the end result should look something like this. Close the hatch, make sure that you've got a nice flush fitment, and if that is good, go ahead and open the hatch back up and grab yourself two 8mm pan head bolts. You're going to insert that from the top before you close the hatch. Now note that if you've got the hatch closed, you will not be able to get these bolts in, and that is just by design. Again, the way this is supposed to work is that when you do open that hatch, that top plate acts like a little bit of a retainer to help keep those bolts in. And that's that. Your remix is completely built. Now it's time to put all of your components and gear in. Enjoy, guys.